2017 Personnel and Finance Meeting. Next up on the agenda is approval, on our agenda is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Have motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. On to item 3, public comment. Any public comment? Appears to be no public comment today. We'll move on to item 4. 4A is approval of the minutes from March 13th. Have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. Item 4B, HR Department. Welcome, Richard. We're going to discuss
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Good morning. You have in front of you a recommendation to approve an adoption agreement between Jackson County and the Williams and Company Financial Services. This goes back. We had for years John Walters as a deferred comp advisor. And with his passing, before then, he had already contracted with Plan Member Services to do the investments. He would continue to be the advisor. With his passing, we've had an interim period where we needed to someone to pick up his accounts for our employees. We have quite a few employees with investments that were through John, and we now have Williams and Company that will take on that task.
discussion. Commissioner Rice.
Just real quickly, is there a difference in cost?
No difference. This is just advisory services.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion? If not, I need a motion and support. Have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next up, facilities. Welcome.
Morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. In front of you, you have a request for exterior window washing at the county buildings.
Discussion? I have a question. Are these all multi-floor buildings?
With the exception of the shelter, yes.
Okay. It's just wondering why we couldn't have, if it was possible to have a jail workforce do the ground level and save some money, or?
Community corrections.
Yes. Well, one way or the other.
Liability.
And Phil, it's one of those things where if we're having to hire out to do the upper floors, they might as well do the lower floor too, since they're on site.
Commissioner Rice.
Rick, this is for the exterior,
Yes, sir.
so who does the interior?
We do the interior every other year, so 2018, we'll put money into our budget to do the interior and exterior again.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Further questions or discussion? If not, we need a motion and support.
So moved.
We have a motion and support. All in favor of approving this action? The low bid from Great Lakes Window Cleaning indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimous. Item 4D, we have another facilities topic.
Yes, Mr. Chair, in front of you, you have a request to replace the hot water boiler at the Channer Road Correctional Facility. This is one of those scenarios where I can't compare it to a hotel, but it's used in the same type of fashion all the time. And it's just outlived its life and needs to be replaced.
Are we required by law to provide hot water?
Yes, sir,
Are we?
we are.
I'm sorry, okay. Discussion?
Rick, is that a usual time length for a boiler?
From what I've seen, it is, based on what we went through at Wesley. This one's a little bit different because it sets on the exterior portion of the building, and it just seems to get a lot more use than the one at Wesley, but the lifespans seem to be about the same
And is there only one boiler for the entire facility?
for the barracks.
I see.
The kitchen has its own separate hot water heater. It's not enough to require a hot water boiler. Same with the admin building.
Thank you.
Now, with the advanced technologies, an on-demand system would not be appropriate for that facility, considering the boiler replacement and the whole analysis?
Sounds bad, but I'm not going to dance. The quality of the city water is such that to have an instant hot water heater that size just won't make it.
Further discussion, questions?
Well, just one more thing.
Rick, so to be clear, it's for hot water only, it's not for heat for the building, correct?
Correct, it's just
Okay.
for bathing and washing.
Any further discussion? If not, I need a motion and support.
I'd move to approve the request to replace the boiler.
Support.
We have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimous. Thank you, Rick. One more, item 4F.
Yes, Mr. Chair?
E.
In front of you, you have a request to approve to the full board repair at the grandstands at the fairgrounds.
Questions? I didn't quite understand, I think I do, but your request, the bid come in over expected price by quite a bit,
It did.
and we're only going to do part of it because of the contingency money to set aside. Could you explain that, please?
Sure. When the entire bid came in more than what we had budgeted for it, Rusty went through and negotiated with the lower bidder for unit pricing. We want to do the worst first and still have contingency money held back because with a almost 100-year-old structure, you never know what you're going to get into when you start chipping away the concrete. This will give us that cushion in case we need it, but also because we've negotiated the unit pricing, if everything goes as planned and they're already on site, then we'll go and do more work. So we use the whole budget.
Leitner.
When you originally put this out for bid was, for this whole project, it was 2012, right? When this first phase started?
Right.
So our budgeting was at 2012 pricing too, right? Is that pretty accurate?
No, that is accurate. We
Okay.
did it in phases over a 5-year period. And again, every bit of specs for this project has been developed by a structural engineer.
Okay, I was just making reference to it being a 5-year-old estimate anyways too, because, you know, a lot changes obviously in 5 years with inflation and just the cost of materials and all that jazz. So, I mean, I guess I kind of would expect anything that we do that we budgeted for 5 years ago to probably go over
And
down the road.
And along with that, as we prepare the budget for 2018, I'll certainly put more funding in there to cover further repairs. Just so you all know, the grandstand means a lot to me. It's a very unique structure. There's really nothing like it in the state of Michigan.
So Rick, this is a capital improvement project paid for out of capital improvement funds, correct?
Yes, sir.
And are there no funds available otherwise to do the whole project now, or? And I'm kind of leaning down to Mike to ask that question. I'm leaning back. Yeah, I can see that.
Well, actually, I can answer that question. I had contingency money set aside where we could have covered this whole cost of the project, but we use that funding to pay for the master plan for the fair. So that's where, this was part of the funding that the former administrator had set aside for the fairgrounds. So it was all used for the fair. It's just, this is what we have.
The parts that you're gonna wait on are not critical things where the grandstands are gonna collapse, correct?
Correct.
Question here, Rick. Does this mean we're going to have to extend the 5-year plan out to an additional year
Or two.
or two? Okay.
The other issue that we need to take into consideration is the fact that underneath the grandstands, it's no longer heated. When the raceway was there, they ran, betting all year round. Now, under the grandstand, it's cold, and the structural engineer has based his repairs on the fact that it's not heated under the grandstands anymore.
That's driving up our repair costs?
A little bit.
Yeah, okay.
Frankly, as Rick indicated, it's over 100 years, or what is it? It's 100 years old or something close.
1920,
1920, okay, almost. It's always going to need repair. It's a large structure. There's always something. We're going to be putting money into that. It's just what you do with things you care about and that are that old.
Any further discussion? Not, I need a motion and support.
So moved.
Passes on. You have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. It'll go to the full board. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you,
Thank you for your
Commissioners.
usual good job. Item up next, item 4F, our monthly finance report. This will be for February.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, I'm standing in for Jim while he's gone. I'm presenting the February 2017 financial statements. The year-to-date benchmark would be 16.7%. The general fund for their expenditures, we were pretty much on target at 16.4. And for the revenues, we're a little down from that benchmark, but that's kind of consistent to the 3-year average. I don't know if there was any questions on those financial statements. I know there are other funds in there as well, which can be a little different from the general fund.
Yeah, it's a little early for there to be too much deviation.
Right.
Other than timing issues for, bills come in, normally if it come in normally came in on March, but it came in April or vice versa, or that kind of thing.
I do have one question maybe for Mike on the, what page is it? Page 2. Thank you. The school liaison program shows 37.2% under. So it's under where we're at currently, correct?
That means that we're over the benchmark.
Over the benchmark, not under?
Over the red means over the benchmark.
And is that because of the school year, the way it's laid out, probably?
Yes, I think also there was some changes in personnel that happened late in the year last year when I looked at it, and it looks like we haven't adjusted the budget to properly reflect it. He's probably going to have to put a budget amendment in, but that's what I saw as I looked at the activity.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
If I might add, just for everyone's FYI there, while we do have, what do I call it, one-page kind of understandings, we are moving towards a little more depth with a contract, an agreement with the schools that I know that the sheriff's office worked with Phil Curtis's office on. So that should be forthcoming, I would think, sometime this summer before the school year starts.
When you and I last talked, you said for the start of the new school year. Okay.
Just wanted
Thank
to
you.
put heads up.
yes, we are requesting an amendment with the increase in revenue and increase to expense of $188,971. And this is kind of typical. When we put together the budget back in last year, there's always going to be changes that we need to make at some point during the year for personnel changes, for correcting categories, shifting of what actually is occurring We're about midway through the year since we're on a September 30th year end. And we also get grant funding changes. They're always applying for grants, so I can always have fluctuations in that, so that's primarily, yes. Or they short us some, we thought you were going to get so much money, but it doesn't come out to that, got to make all those changes during the year. Yes. Thank you.
I think. I think you've chased the public away, Phil.